Hey guys, my guest tonight, Daryl F. Mallett, is going to be taking us on a tour of haunted Tucson, Arizona. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Great. I hope the internet holds up tonight. As you guys know, I live in an area where it's totally Comcast bound here, and when there's big news to be had, there we go. When there's big news to be had, and there's a lot going on right now in the news, I will admit it freely, everybody and their brother gets home about this time and flips on their laptops or flips on their phone and doing all that good stuff. So hopefully we won't get any real bad drops or anything today. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you think you have a paranormal need, we can help you out. It might take us a couple days to get to you because California is really, really every day I move the adjustment on this. California is a really, really big state, and people don't realize how big we are. So, like I said, we've got beachfront property, we've got deserts, we've got mountain areas, we've got a lot of farmland. So, it may take us a while. But in the case that it does, we do have mediums on staff who can give you a phone call and talk to you and do a remote read. And in most cases, if it is paranormal, they can calm that energy right down until we can get out there. It usually doesn't take us more than 1 or 2 days. That being said, if you want to find us, well, we'll start in. Facebook, you name it, all social media, that's where you can find us. Just Google California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team. Tonight, if you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, and you like what you see, please feel free to hit that follow button if you haven't done so already. And please feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat room and show me some love. It's all about showing some love and thumbs up and happy faces and all that good stuff. And also, it's a lot of instructions. Hope you guys are taking notes. And also share. Share during the show. Say, hey, you know what? There's this cool little show I watch. Why don't you come check it out? So hit that share button. YouTube. A lot of you guys are watching from YouTube tonight. Over 1,000 videos I've done over at YouTube of this show. All different topics. I'm a journalist. I'm a photojournalist, so I like to vary it. So there's all different topics over at YouTube. All kinds of stuff to choose from. Okay, so check out our YouTube page, if you haven't done it already. And if you haven't done so already, please, if you like what you see in here tonight, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, but it'll subscribe you to all our great videos and all that good stuff, all right? Same rules. Chat room, sharing, show us some love, all right? Twitch, same thing. We're broadcasting live on Twitch tonight. Please handle all that stuff. I really appreciate it. And away we go. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Arizona because at that time Nancy Mass was living there, and we did some walking around Tucson, and actually ended up in Tombstone, of course, because that's where all of us ghost hunters go. We go to the Tombstone, and Nancy and I are going to be doing a show on that. But I thought Tucson was very interesting. It also reminded me of the gold country here in California, like Placerville and Auburn, and further on up, like places like Murphy's and stuff, because there's a lot of history there. It goes back, it goes way back in history. When you think about Arizona, that's the Wild West, right? When you think about that, Marty Robbins songs and all this stuff between Arizona and Texas, right? That's just the Wild West. So I'm really excited to have my guest on, and I'm going to let him tell you about himself. But Daryl F. Mallett is a filmmaker and a historian and an author, and he just got his book's only been out, I think, for a few months, and it's Haunted Tombstone. I've had the chance to read it. Very interesting stuff in there, And next time I get out to Tombstone, I'm going to go ahead and get a hold of him, and maybe we'll get together for some coffee or or something. And let's see, I'm just looking at something. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm just checking messages from you, Daryl. I got it. Um, yeah. So hopefully we can get together for some coffee and stuff, and maybe take a look around haunted Tucson. Okay. Let me bring him in, get the show started, and let's talk about some spooky buildings, shall we? Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you.
I was going to put my helm back here, and I couldn't get to sit upright. It kept falling over, so I thought, what's the point?
Right.
Tell us about you, sir.
Tell you about me. Wow. What do you want to know? I'm a writer, editor, screenwriter, producer, actor, jack of all trades, master of only words. I have 5 amazing kids, ranging from 16 tomorrow to 31. My parents live in California, Southern California. I grew up in Orange County, and here I am in the desert.
Fantastic. And why did you end up in the desert? Some people go
Well,
for health reasons.
Well, no, like many good and bad decisions in my life, there was a girl involved.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I ended up here.
Okay.
And that's all we'll say.
And you liked it. Obviously, you liked it, or you wouldn't still be there.
I really enjoy Arizona. It's
Mm-hmm.
the climate is wonderful. Monsoon season is my favorite time of year, which is right now. I miss the water. Of course, I grew up on the Pacific coast, swimming, surfing, and there's no water here, so I'm not sure why I stay, but I love it. The desert has a beauty all its own.
Mm-hmm. I think Arizona's gorgeous. That's one thing that I could say. Visited there quite a few times. Had relatives that live there, and I love the rock formations. The different colors. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. There's no denying it. Plus the history. I'm a history buff. Just you're a historian. I'm a history buff, and I just love I love going back to older places like that. That's why we spend a lot of time in Tombstone too. Going to the buildings and talking to people and thinking, well, maybe I'll come back and film here because I do amateur filmmaking as well. So
Okay.
so I do want to get back out there. I do want to get back out there.
Right on.
So you've written a book about haunted Arizona, haunted Tucson. What got you into that?
So about 2009, I did a book for Arcadia Publishing called Falcon Field, which is a history of Mesa, Arizona's municipal airport. It was founded as a Royal Air Force base during World War II by Hollywood stars like Henry Fonda and Gene Tierney and Jimmy Stewart, Hoagie Carmichael. And so I lived next door to the airport for 8 years. I'm a pilot myself, and I had no idea that it started out as a Royal Air Force base. So I just kind of got hooked and met some of the pilots that had retired here to Arizona, and it just became a passion project for me to tell this story about how the RAF was here. There were Japanese concentration camps here. There was a German POW camp here. I mean, just this whole history that just is there for the finding if you know about it, right? So that was kind of my introduction to these history books. Then life happened, kids happened, etc., and I sort of drifted away, did other projects. But a few years ago, I had the publishing company reach out to me, some new editors, and it was great. It was kind of like Rome reaching out to the outpost in Jerusalem. We're still here. We're still in our uniforms, marching around, waiting for you to call us. And so I didn't really have a book in mind at the time, so I just asked them what they wanted me to do. And they said, we don't have a book for our haunted series about Tucson, which is shocking because it's the second largest city in Arizona, right?
Right.
So I came at it as a historian from that perspective. A lot of the books are written by true believers. I'm an open-minded skeptic. I can't point definitively to any specific thing in my life that I can say absolutely is supernatural, but I love the shows. I love watching what they're doing. In fact, Expedition Unknown is on in the background right now. So it's fascinating stuff. And as you know, famous science fiction writer once said, any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So maybe we don't know. We don't know what we
Right.
don't know, right? So I'm all about the search. Keep up the search, all you searchers. And yeah, so I approached it more as a historian, and I just love telling history.
Well, that is one thing I love about going into old hotels, and investigating old hotels like the Murphy's Hotel up here in our Gold Country, because architecture. I'm not just looking at the ghost
Yeah.
stories. I'm looking at the architecture and stuff, and it's fabulous. Especially if
Yes.
it's had a fire, they've rebuilt it or whatever. But I mean, it's just interesting to go through and then you touch this stuff and you think, oh my God, it's been here for a couple hundred years or whatever, and it's just an incredible thing to do.
Well, we have one of the oldest European buildings in America here in Tucson. It's the San Javier Cathedral that was built by Father Eusebio Kino when he was founding the missions all up and down. There's a few of them in California, San Luis Obispo being one of the famous ones. And so,
Right.
I mean, are you kidding me? The oldest European style building in North America. What?
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
When you think about going into ghost stories, like you say, you're kind of skeptical. You're kind of on the fence. When the idea was first proposed to you, what was your first thought? When they said, "Hey, we could use one of these books."
I did my research. I bought a bunch of the books, mostly obviously by authors here in Arizona that had done similar books. Deb Branning is one of them. She's kind of the queen of haunted Arizona. I reached out to Becky McKitty Giddison, who's the head of the Tucson Paranormal Society and Ghost Society. And I did my research on it. I wanted to. I never really approached it from a true believer perspective. Like I said, I'm a historian, and I wanted to kind of gather the reports from the newspapers for the last 200 years. And so. I started out when I was in college. I sold my first book when I was 17. It was a reference book. I'm an enumerator. I love making lists. It's kind of my OCD. And so being able to compile all that information and distill it down into one location kind of appeals to me. And so that was kind of the thrust of how I approached this one was, let's gather all that stuff into one place. And it's also a tool for true believers, people that want to go on the ghost tours. They can look at this and say, oh, I've never been there. I didn't even know there was a ghost reporting there. So,
Well, you mentioned the mission. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So as those of you who are in California, we kind of grew up with the missions being front and center. They were very important as far as historical and, like you said, architecturally. And so it was fun to be able to look into that. And of course, when I found out that it is the oldest European style building in America, I was quite pleased by that. I mean, how often do you get a chance to really explore something like that? So I got to take the tour. The artwork inside is absolutely stunning. Religious art, of course, iconography is huge. People spend their whole career studying religious iconography. So the White Dove of the Desert, San Javier del Bac, it was built as a Catholic mission. Father Eusebio Kino, like I said, came here in 1692 to preach to the O'odham people here, and the construction began. He founded the place, but of course, construction didn't begin until 1783, so he was long gone. And it was finished in 1797. It has one cupola missing. If you've ever seen pictures of it, like one of the domes is missing, and I believe that's on purpose. Kind of like in the Arabic world, they always deliberately put something wrong into their design because only God is perfect, right? So there's a big story there, but literally they build themselves, and I'm reading here what my research. It says it's built as the oldest original and intact European structure in the United States. So there's statues, there's paintings, there's murals, there's tiles, you name it, it's there. Wood paint, tile, ceramics, glass. It's a marvel of art. It's like a museum by itself. So the sighting there, the ghost story there, there's been a sighting of an old Catholic priest walking, but the one that touched me the most was there was a school there, and it burned down. Of course, I wrote this book a year ago, so I got to look up the dates on it. So the schoolhouse burned down in 1949, and it trapped and killed the children and the nuns inside. And so there's been sightings of ghostly nuns leading ghostly children, trying to get them to safety, which is just, it just touches your heart. They're still trying to take care of those kids, right?
That is heart-rending. Oh my God.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And then they also say that that there's also a priest that's trying to help the kids climb out a window. So again, I've never seen those myself, and the priests I talked to there, none of them have experienced it firsthand. But those are the reports from the newspaper that I was able to find.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And your book is laid out so nicely because you've got it divided by category. So if someone wants to look up haunted hotels, things are there, Let's talk about really quick. I'm going to
credit my editor on that one for coming up with that idea.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about schools a little bit, because that's not the only school that's active, right?
That's not the only school. There actually were so many schools that I couldn't include all of them in here. Obviously, the most famous one is the University of Arizona because it's been here the longest. Founded in 1885. Almost 30 years before Arizona became a state.
Right.
I actually was able to find photographs of the old main building, which was the first structure built, when all the classes were held in one building, where there's Civil War cannons out front. I have no idea where those Civil War cannons went because I can't find them anywhere on the campus now, but I've got photos of that. And there are about, I want to say 12 buildings on campus that have reported hauntings. Everything from the oldest ones to the original gym that was built in 1926, where they say that they still see athletes coming through. Centennial Hall, which is kind of a misnomer because it was built in 1936, and we haven't hit 100 years yet. But I don't know why it's called Centennial Hall, but that's what it's called.
Right.
And then of course you don't have to have an old building to have hauntings. I discovered because you automatically think ghosts. You got to have an old structure, right?
Right.
No, modern languages building built in 1967. And supposedly there's there is somebody there that they found a skeleton while they were building the building. So who knows? But yeah, I don't know if your viewers can see these photos, but let's see. I got to remember it's reversed in my screen. So here's the old main building. Look at those. There's cannons right out front.
Wow.
I'm like, because it was still the Wild West out here. We still had raiders and bandits and cowboys and Indians and all the whole shebang. So I've never been to a university that had to be heavily defended. So that's interesting in and of itself.
Right. Well, when you talk about like Centennial Hall, isn't that a theater?
The Centennial Hall, it does have a theater in it. That's correct. And so apparently there are, so originally it wasn't a theater, right? It was originally for music classes. And I guess the theater was built into it later. The School of Music was founded in 1926, but Centennial Hall, came along 10 years later. So the auditorium was built later. It seated 500-ish people, and apparently let's see, what did I write in here? Centennial Hall, when they were refurbishing it, they discovered the ghost of a Spaniard, a Spanish colonial explorer. I'm not sure what we call them today in today's PC world, but they were called conquistadors back in the day.
Right.
And they were here as early as 1521. They also have a lady ghost in residence, dressed in Victorian style clothing, but she is not friendly. Apparently, she stands in the wings and glares at people, and may or may not have pushed people down the stairs. So
They
kind of
have,
creepy.
theaters tend to be haunted, and I was doing some research today on these places as well, in addition to your book and all that. And like with that theater, there's the person that client that stays on the catwalk. When they see whoever this is on the catwalk. And I noticed that even doing theaters here, like the Woodland Opera House, you run into that all the time. It's like the
Yes,
thing. The people that are at these theaters don't want to leave because it's their happy place.
The ghost of bitter actors.
Yeah. It's just where they hang out, But it's incredible when you think about it. I had to go up on a catwalk. I don't know if you've done a catwalk like that. Well, in your profession, of course you have. Dumb. Bad.
Right.
But I have been up in those catwalks, especially when there's a proscenium theater, and it's
the up catwalks. I thought you meant the catwalk.
No,
like
I'm talking about the up catwalk.
I have never been on a catwalk.
Get up there.
Yes. Generally, they don't want gentlemen who look like this old and grizzled on a catwalk.
Right.
So no, you mean up in the skyways? Yeah, I've actually done a lot of work up there. So
I've been there, done that. So in the dark, as a ghost hunter, in the dark, you're up there on the
No, those of you that go actively looking for it, you have my respect and my shaking of my head, because it's like I can get enough trouble on my own. I do not need to go looking for beings that are above my pay scale. Okay, so
there you go. It can get exciting up there,
Yeah, there's also some good, Tucson High School, the main school that was founded here. It has some ghost stories there. It's still in use. I've actually talked to students that have gone there, and some of them have said yes, absolutely, they've seen ghostly things before. So that's kind of fun.
And the Bloom School.
The Bloom School. Yeah, so the Bloom School, that's actually one of the, it was actually originally built, I think, in, let me see, I got to check my notes again, because this book came out. This book actually came out a year ago, September, just in time for Halloween last year. So let's see, 1973. I was named after a former teacher there, and apparently one of them is that kids get locked into the bathroom randomly. Bricks will randomly fall out of the bathroom wall, so something happened in that bathroom.
Right.
And then there was a principal who passed away on duty while she was working as principal, and so people have seen her as well, wandering up and down the halls and waving at people and unlocking and locking doors. So I mean, I don't know about you, but I've seen those movies, and I definitely, you think about Star Trek, but you also think, the way the doors open automatically. But I'm not really keen on being inside a building or ship that doors randomly lock and unlock. That just doesn't fill me with any glee at all.
It's rather unnerving, especially in the dark, as you're walking through there.
That's the question, Charlotte. Why do you guys always search? And I'm watching this on Expedition Unknown. Why is it always searching at night? Why don't you go in the daytime? If there's energy there, it's going to be there.
Exactly.
Because in the daylight.
Because the darkness makes it more of a thrill.
Okay, well, I don't like roller coasters, and I'm going to die. I don't want to die of a heart attack when somebody pops out and goes boo, and I go.
Because you're right. They are there during the daytime.
It's like always in the dark, and I'm creeped out. I'm like, why don't they go during the daylight?
I have done a lot of investigations during the daylight. Either way, especially if you go to like at a theater, like say the Fox Theater or the Centennial, and you get in there right after a performance, because that tends to, I guess, the energy levels, will produce more poltergeist activity and stuff. So you want to go in after, and sometimes you can't get in at night, so you have to go in during the day. But sure. I agree with you. I've gotten just as much stuff.
I'm scared enough already looking for ghosts.
I'm having to deal with pitch black.
Why do we have to?
No, I'm honest. I'm afraid of the dark.
I'm not afraid of the dark, but it just when it's creepy like that, it's like I'm good. I'm gonna go wait for you guys in the car.
I am afraid of the dark, and my team gets mad because I've got the brightest light on my head. That, or I'm holding, like I said, behind the camera, with the infrared, so I can see what the hell's in front of me.
I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing when you're the host, like you or these guys on Expedition N. But I'm thinking about the camera crew. Like half of my camera crew would just like run screaming. I mean, there's just no way they would be out there in the dark with me, probably in the first place. What was really cool though, you said theaters and at the school, but separately there's a whole section on theaters, and it was fun because we had the first Tucson Paranormal Convention last September at the Fox Theater, the old Fox Theater that was built in 1930, which itself has haunting stories and has a section in my book. It was a real thrill to actually be on that stage, to go into the green room, to go down into the catacombs where the kitchen and the changing rooms and the prop and costume rooms are, and to see all the autographs on the wall. Penn and Teller, Lost Lonely Boys, I mean, some super famous bands went through. I took pictures of all of it, and of course I think I signed my name right next to Penn and Teller just to make sure people saw it.
Just to make sure they saw it. So what's going on there? Do you remember what's going on at the Fox Theater?
So the Fox Theater, there's supposedly a man from the Depression era. It was built in the 30s. That he is supposedly the ghost of a beggar that used to sit out front and beg for money. He's looking for money to feed his family. We still have those. They're actually not ghosts. They're actually live people. Okay. We don't need to get into the whole homeless thing, but Becky McKitty-Gittison, who did the introduction to my book and does the Tucson Ghost Company, she said she's had her own experience of having a presence while she was doing something there, playing with the lights, tugging on her shirt, pulling her hair. So there's also been reports of performances being interrupted when props move on their own. So there may be a poltergeist there, supposedly. And, the many ghost hunters that have explored the theater agree that there is definitely something going on there. And the weirdest one was a man who died in a car accident right out in front of the theater, who just decided to weld himself to the building and stay there. So
very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. I
mean, it's funny. I want to, if I want to meet a ghost, I want to meet somebody, like John Wayne. Why does it have
somebody
to be
cool?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure ghosts, I'm not going to say ghosts aren't cool, just in case, they're listening.
Yeah.
But,
somebody,
and that's kind of how I came at it. Ghosts, I have to say ghosts are real. As a Christian, my book says that the Holy Spirit is the original ghost. He's the OG, right? And so I did a whole section on that, coming at it kind of as if you are a Christian and you believe the Bible, you believe in ghosts, because there's the Holy Spirit segment of the Father. There's also a whole on the Son. There's a whole segment also on where the King Saul goes to the witch at Endor. I love that name. I wonder where George Lucas got that. The witch at Endor and he says, I want to talk to the ghost of Samuel. And God goes, okay. And the ghost of Samuel shows up, and the medium goes, holy moly, because she knew she was a fake. Right? And the ghost of Samuel shows up. So you have to believe that there's ghosts in reality, but the idea that they've become, malevolent, that they've become, I think that's all of our invention. I don't believe that there's ghosts running around wreaking havoc that, the higher power is unaware of, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the introduction, that was probably, I think the introduction was probably my second favorite other than the research. I mean, I love the research, right?
Right.
But I think writing the introduction and kind of trying to distill how I felt about it, how you can come at it as somebody who is religious, as somebody who is spiritual, as somebody who believes in God, and still acknowledge that we don't know, right? And so I think the legends that we have. Let me just, can I read part of this, because I wrote it. Trying to redistill it is,
Yeah, go ahead, no problem.
So what I wrote is, every culture throughout history has similar stories, myths, and legends. Universal concepts including good and evil, God or gods, devil or demons, a great flood, aliens, otherworldly beings, dragons, unicorns, and other fantastical creatures, and of course creatures of the night such as vampires, werewolves, mummies, and ghosts. Are ghosts real? The $1,000,000 question, and it has 3 answers: yes, no, and perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Is it supernatural, science beyond current knowledge, which we talked about earlier? Clerics and priests name them evil, while paranormal investigators attempt to prove or disprove their existence at all. I love that most of you are very neutral about it when you go in. You're there. You're not there to prove or disprove. You just want to find out. You're looking for facts, right? Because you should never go in with your own theory, because then you'll make whatever happens fit your theory.
Right.
Our long-standing ambiguity with regard to the supernatural realm is also a factor that makes believing palpable. I myself am an open-minded skeptic. And then I go through this whole thing, and then I kind of wrap it up with, and I also talk about the ghosts from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, right? Because what's interesting is that those ghosts, like the Holy Spirit, they're there to teach, help, guide, and comfort. And the ghost of Samuel, of course, adds reprove King Saul. And it's interesting that the spirits of Christmas in A Christmas Carol bear a striking resemblance to the Holy Spirit and their intentions. They're there to guide Scrooge. They're there to, reader beware. This is what's going on, and you need to kind of pay attention, right?
Right.
So, I don't understand why we've done it, and I'm trying to find the place where I actually wrote what I was thinking about there. So when I keep asking questions, when I find it, I'll come back to it.
I just, a good friend of mine who was a paranormal investigator for years and years and years. When I first started out, I made sure my team went with went to events put on by the biggest paranormal teams in Sacramento. I mean, not Sacramento, but California, so that we could learn from them. Like camera setup and different things like that. And she came to the library to speak one time, and she got my attention because she goes, to be honest, this is an inexact science. And anybody that tells you that anyone that tells you that they're an expert is full of it, because
physics is not an exact science either. Yes, there are laws of physics that are absolute, right? There's temperature, whatever. Theoretical physics is fantastic because you can do anything theoretically, right? So I always joke about that, like the law practice or the practice of medicine. They're still practicing. They haven't nailed it yet. So
no.
Spaceships were not an exact science until somebody built one. So
right.
So
right.
Here it is.
Exactly.
I found it. It says it's. So I wrote, if the spirits spoken of in the Bible before Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy in popular literature are more benevolent than malevolent, why then are ghosts so terrifying to us in our enlightened and less superstitious era, right? Why have they become associated with negative or dark energy? And the reasons range from people relating scary incidents or evil intent and behaviors to creative storytelling, fantastic special effects. And let's face it, people like to be scared. Most people do. Right. Many people do. Daryl does not. That's why people like skydiving, roller coasters, bungee jumping, base jumping, and any number of other adrenaline spiking sports and experiences. It's why horror movies are so popular. I do not like to be scared. I do not like roller coasters and horror movies. And it's why one time jumping out of a plane was quite enough for me. Thank you very much. And yet we remain fascinated by the supernatural.
Yes, absolutely. And I can honestly say this is that growing up, I would always put my own haunted house in at my house, special effects, everything, but I cannot go through.
Yeah. Okay, so you're like me. I love Halloween. I love dressing up. I love the costumes. I love scaring people. I personally do not like being scared. So
I went to Universal once when they first built that pyramid, where the mummies had. Yeah. And I walk in and I can see them watching us, waiting for us to walk to a certain point. For this jump. I told the guy. I looked up and I just went, "Don't do it." I'll either be screaming out of here or I'm going to haul off and pop somebody if it comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like jump scares, So I shouldn't have said that. Everybody I know is going to be doing jump scares on me now.
Yeah.
But
the few times I go to see horror movies, I mean, and as a filmmaker, of course, I I do watch. I force myself to watch them because it's part of the craft. It's part of the industry. But I have to have all the lights on. I need friends around me. Blah blah blah. And when I go to the theater, the few times I've been in the theater, when I get scared, I just go ah, and everybody jumps before the jump scare. So
That's good.
nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to go to horror movies with me anymore in the theater.
I love it. I love it. You mentioned in your book about a husband that had attempted to murder his wife.
Yes.
And she
so
survived. And you also mentioned, well, go ahead and tell the story, then I'm going to add something to that.
Okay, so the story that you're referring to is an interesting one. So Hiram Sanford Stevens was he was born in 1832. He was raised in Vermont and enlisted in the Army. He served against the Apache Nation in the New Mexico Territory, and during so this would have been just pre-civil, about 10 years, 15 years before the Civil War. After he was discharged, he came to Tucson and had a ranch, and then I guess he did. It says here he disappeared during the Civil War, whereabouts unknown, and I wasn't able to track anything about him during the Civil War. It's speculated that he did go back and rejoin one of the armies, but being from Vermont, I suspect he was a blue, not a gray. But it doesn't say, so he may have been a spy of some sort. But he comes back after the war and becomes one of the Tucson's counselors, because they didn't, we weren't a state yet. We didn't have senators, but there was a governor of the territory. And so he became one of the very well-known people politically in Arizona. He intermarried with one of the very famous Hispanic families here, the Santa Cruz family. And, this guy, for all intents and purposes, had a very successful career. He was doing well. They built a house that actually is now part of the Tucson Museum of Art. And there's a restaurant there, which is also listed because that's where it happened. I actually work occasionally at that restaurant because it's owned by a friend of mine. It's called Cafe a la Carte. If you're in Tucson, it's a great place to have breakfast or lunch. It's attached to the museum. And supposedly the pastry room is where it all happened. And so the pastry chef there said that he has actually seen her ghost and his ghost in the building late at night or early in the morning. Fortunately, I'm not a morning person, so I don't have to experience that. But so at the end of his life, something went wrong and his finances took a dump, and so he shot her in the head and then killed himself, and she fell to the ground, and then he killed himself. That's very Romeo and Juliet, right?
Right.
She had a very heavy Spanish gold comb in her hair, because she had long black hair, and this very ornate gold comb in her hair, and it actually ricocheted, so it knocked her out, because the force hitting it knocked her out, and he thought she was dead, but the bullet actually ricocheted and didn't do any damage, and so she survived. She moved into the house immediately next door, which is also owned by the museum and is a historic house, and lived into the early 19 teens. And then her whole family is, I believe her daughter, her niece married into the Sam Hughes family. I mean, all these families, these historical families, if you do genealogy, they're all related. They all know each other. And so it's a very interesting story. And then they're both buried in the same cemetery here, which I talk about elsewhere in the book, Evergreen Cemetery. He's buried in Evergreen Cemetery. She's buried in the Catholic cemetery. They're right next to each other, so people have reported seeing his ghost going and crying on her grave in sorrow. Wow. So, obviously, if there's ghosts, who of us can say that they absolutely have to be tied to one location or one? Right. I mean, if I was a ghost, I'd just kind of go wherever I want to go, right? I would think. Right. Unless there's laws of ghosts, right? Like you can only go.
Right. Right.
So,
and that's not unheard of.
Right. So they've
uh,
been, both of them, the husband and the highwayman Petra, have both been seen at the museum, restaurant, and at the cemetery.
and like I said, that's not unheard of. There's a hotel and called the Hotel Jeffrey. I guess it's Hotel Jeffrey. And across the street of those things, the hotel is named Hotel Charlotte. But the miner that supposedly died at the Hotel Jeffrey, they see him go across at night because
Okay.
that was his girlfriend. So he goes across to
Oh,
be with her at night.
okay. Well,
And there
our
was another.
famous.
Yes,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you first.
And then there's another report of a Polish opera singer who haunts a lot of the theaters around around Northern California,
Yeah,
and she has been seen in like 4 different theaters. So
that's
they do
awesome.
move from place to place. Go ahead now.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I would think too. Is like if you're, especially if you're a performer, you would go to places that meant something to you, or you know, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be, and not all the ghost stories in here are about tragedy, right? Like some people just
Right.
they had a beautiful life, they died of old age, and then they came back to visit places that they were most fond of.
Hmm.
So that's cool. Well,
Absolutely.
our famous hotel is called the Hotel Congress.
Hmm.
Um, it was built in 1919, like right after we became a state in 1912. Um, I'm going to get my dates wrong. We became a state the same day the Titanic sank, I believe.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that's, or it's 2 days before or after. I always get that wrong.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's February 12th or February 14th, 1912. So that's kind of cool. So the family that, the father and son architects built this absolutely gorgeous theater hotel. It's still there. It still runs
Hmm.
as a hotel. It's still got the 1920s Art Deco uh, decorations in the lobby. It's got the plushy carpets. It's got the plushy chairs. It's just absolutely magnificent. Brass fixtures everywhere, tile everywhere, brick building. It's absolutely gorgeous. But they actually embrace their hauntedness, and they have 4 rooms that are haunted. Supposedly 4 rooms. There might be more at this point, but and every Halloween they do a huge party. They're on the ghost tour. I stayed in the hotel, and it's like, if there are ghosts, they're like, no, don't show up for this guy, because he's doing history. He doesn't really believe that we're here, so shh, everybody be quiet. So nothing happened while I was there. And then a week later, one of my ghost contacts at the Ghost Society, they stayed there and they totally got scared to death. I'm like, what?
Hmm.
It's like they know. It's like horses know when you're scared
Hmm.
and act up. Apparently, ghosts know when you're a skeptic and don't show up. So room
Absolutely.
two, yeah. So room 214. It says there's a ghost in the window. It's a man in a seersucker suit. Nobody knows what a seersucker suit is in 2024, unless you're a fashionista. Diane Donato, if you're watching, she'll know what it is, because she's a fashionista. Room 219, hotel manager says that they get calls once a week asking if somebody can come and let them out of the bathroom because the bathroom door locks by itself.
Right.
And there's no key for the bathroom, so they have to take the whole door apart. And at that point, I would just say, just leave the door off. That's
Hmm.
my theory.
Hmm.
There's a lady in the white dress. Lots of cultures have lady in the white dress, especially Native American, Hispanic cultures, and Old West cultures. There's always a lady in the white dress. La Llorona.
Hmm.
Irish have it. The Celts have it. She's in room 242. Supposedly, she is the ghost of a woman who killed herself while staying there. I didn't get a date on that one. And then the most touching one for me, I think, is room 220. They call it Vince's room. So Vince Zuda, and it's funny because as a genealogist also, I got to dig into the history of these people, the actual people that usually isn't told in the story, right? Like, so it just says, oh, this is the ghost of a former worker, Vince Zuda. Well, I want to
Right.
know all about him. Who was he? Where did he come from? Who are his people? And so I was able to find out that Vincent P. Zuda was born in 1917 in Illinois. I found his parents. I found his father and his baby brother both died of the influenza outbreak in 1918. So he and his mom and brother came out to Arizona after World War II. He was a veteran. He and his brother were veterans. And they came out here in a train in 1965. He took a room at 220. And so think about this. 1965. He lived in that hotel room until 2001.
Wow.
And became an employee there. So what is that? 65, 75. I don't math. I'm not a mathologist. So 75, 85, 95, 05. So just under 40 years, he lived in that room and worked there. And apparently his ghost still is there, and he will. People see him going downstairs to get his cup of coffee in the morning. He had a very regular routine. There will be like a tray with a butter knife and a bagel will appear outside of his room. It just like appears in the hallway.
Right.
And apparently he puts butter knives all over everywhere randomly, which I think that's fine. I mean, if I was a ghost, I would probably want to wreak a little havoc in a fun way.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'll just leave copies of my book all over the place.
Nothing wrong with that. Have you found that some of these haunted hotels keep records of this stuff? Like, like the people that stay there will write stuff down, and just like when we go to Murphy's Hotel, they see us coming and they have a big box for us.
Yes.
Stuff that's written on cocktail napkins or whatever.
Right.
Of what went on. So did you?
Yeah. So the Hotel Congress actually has a book where you can record your incidents, if you will. One of my favorite ones is here. Let me turn to it. It's a I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like an antiques mall, I guess. 22nd Street Antiques Mall. And so it's a place where you can go and rent a booth and sell your stuff. Here it is, 22nd Street Antique Mall, built in 2007, so relatively new. But there's a book at the cash register. There's actually a journal where you can write down your experiences. And most of the stories associated with that antique mall seem to be ghosts that are attached to items that are being sold, because it's an antique mall, right? So when an item, like, people will report ghost stories that nobody else has ever heard of, and then the booth owners will be able to track it to an item that came in. So the ghost was never there before the item, and then once the item is sold, they're never seen again. So that's kind of interesting. It's kind of like I call it like it's like a train station for ghosts, I guess, this antique mall.
But it makes sense because, I mean, being antiques and everything, I mean, like you say, the attachments, I mean, the stuff that comes in there, when they do have their sales and their booths, absolutely, it's going to have attachments.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, so if you're going to, again, I'm not, I don't study this, but I guess if you were going to categorize ghosts, there would be location-based ghosts, there would be item-based ghosts. I mean, just watch Supernatural, you'll figure it out.
What about other hotels? Because I read about the Pioneer as well.
Yeah, the Pioneer Hotel is definitely one of our famous. I mean, it seems like all of these are famous hotels, because not because of ghosts, but the Pioneer Hotel. So the Steinfeld family, the Steinfeld-Zeckendorf empire. So the Zeckendorfs, we actually had a department store here called Zeckendorfs for decades and decades and decades. Kind of like I don't know if you remember Mervyn's. Mervyn's, you're probably younger than me, so you don't remember Mervyn's or Gemco. Kind of regional. Yeah.
Gemco.
Yeah, so kind of regional, built by families. I believe the Steinfelds were also part of the piano family, the ones that built pianos. But there was a whole bunch of them out here. They came from Germany in the 18 Mumbles, and basically became, merchants and mercantilemen, businessmen. And of course, then you add mining, and then you become a banker, and so the Pioneer Hotel, it was built, I want to say 1920s. And there was a lot of buildings built by the same architecture firm, and some of them are also haunted buildings in my book. So I don't know if now there's ghosts following this family, right? This architecture family. I don't know. And so there's supposedly the ghost of Harold Steinfeld, who was the founder of it, is been seen there. But so what happened is, this one's super tragic, because in 1970, Hughes Aircraft, which is now Raytheon, held its annual Christmas party at the Pioneer. So there's hundreds of employees and guests there. And just after midnight, there was a fire. A fire broke out on the 4th floor and went upward, and it was basically the Towering Inferno. There, 1970, and so about, what did they say? About 80 people were injured and 28 people died in the fire, including Harold and Margaret Steinfeld, the founders. 2 grandchildren of the governor of Sonora, Mexico, 5 children of the Sonora, Mexico police chief, movie stars. I mean, there's just a bunch of people that died. And they ended up charging a 16-year-old black kid with arson. He was sentenced to 28 consecutive life sentences. This is 1970. He was released in 2013, part of the Innocent Project. He finally proved that he wasn't there, and that he got railroaded after spending 42 years in prison. And who knows what his life would have been, but then he was promptly rearrested for stealing something, and yeah. So just a tragic story all around. But according to one account that I found in the newspaper, it says this is one of the most busy buildings with paranormal activity because of the number of people who died there. So there's supposedly the ghosts of everybody who died there shows up from time to time. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Were you able to go out and interview some of these property owners or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is one of the first things I do, is I contact the building owners if I can find them. In one case, I did get to talk to the Corlett family that designed, the architects' descendants. I got to look at blueprints. Again, that's all part of the fun part of research, is being able to see things that the public will never see, right? So I got to see blueprints. They have their own, family library, family history museum of all of these buildings they designed, drawings going back to the 19-teens, which is fantastic. Current owners, like one hotel, they didn't even want to be in the book. And I said, well, it's too late. I've already turned it into my editor. So
wow.
I said, plus, it's good advertising, right?
Right.
So the owners may not believe that it's haunted and maybe don't want to promote that, but anybody who picks this up that is interested in supernatural is like, I want to go stay there.
Right.
So I managed to convince them to let me leave it in there, but they didn't. They gave me the grand tour and everything. It's a gorgeous building, but they didn't really want to participate in it. Other people, like the owners of the Oserans, who own the Hotel Congress, they were all in. They sent me so much stuff. I was like, okay, I need like a fire hose. I'm like eating with a fire hose. All the information they sent there, and then I found out John Dillinger was arrested at the Congress Hotel. I'm like, why doesn't his ghost show up?
Well, that is cool. Yeah.
We have Dillinger days here. Why doesn't Dillinger's ghost show up at the Congress Hotel? I mean,
That's funny. That's really funny. What did you find?
So the answer, Charlotte, was some of them were into it and some of them weren't. But I got to meet descendants of these famous families. These are families that have streets named after them, for crying out loud. And it's just they just faded into society and became unknown normal people after their famous ancestors did whatever their famous ancestor did. So it's kind of cool. And they're a lot of them are really tickled that somebody thought enough to remember their name and look them up. So that's the fun part.
Yeah, it is the fun part. Out of every place that you checked out, which one stood out to you the most?
When you say stood out, give me some more parameters, please.
As far as the story and everything connected to the activity.
like what touched me the most.
Yeah.
I got to say anything that involves kids. So the one of
Okay.
the school burning down at San Javier, that one's really heartrending. The story of the Sanders where he tried to kill. I mean, how could it get so bad that you killed your wife? You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
there was no problems with them with their relationship as far as the the gossip pages that I could find from that time period. They were still quite in love, but he just decided to take her out with him, and thank God, he didn't. But pretty much anything with kids. A lot of the stories that involve kids, I couldn't really find out information other than a ghostly girl is seen in the hallway. There was no names, there was no dates. But those are the kind of the ones that break my heart, because what do kids have to go through to become a ghost? You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
You just, here. Well, let's see. It's backwards in my picture. Where am I? So here are two of my two youngest. It just breaks my heart to think of somebody that age going through something,
Absolutely.
tragic or traumatic like that. But it happens. It's life.
Absolutely. So what's next for you?
What's next for me? I am working on turning in a new book in this series called Arizona's Copper Corridor. It is a history of the mining towns between Tucson and Globe, Miami, which is in the center of our state, and then so between north and south, and then from Phoenix to Winkleman, there's this little T-shaped two freeways, and there's just so many ghost towns and abandoned towns and disappeared towns along those two. So that's kind of a fun regional history book. I got to do some stuff there. I started researching that book right after I finished this one in 2009, and met a lot of the families that are pioneers out there. A lot of stories that were heartwarming, including I'm sure we don't have time for this interview, but I would love to talk about it after the next book comes out. Was relocating the grave of one of my distant relatives who just happened to be a pioneer out here, and exhuming his body and doing a full Civil War reenactment funeral, and putting back together the three different branches of his family. He was 82 years old when he died. He'd been married 3 times, and those 3 branches of the family have just drifted apart over 90 years. And so I was able to track down 250 or so descendants of his, including the last grandson, and we brought them all back together for the reinterment. It was so heartwarming to see these families reunite with each other, because they all knew each other's name, like the last names, but they were aware of it, but they just didn't hang out, right? Because it's been 100 years. Right. So that was really heartwarming. So that's my next book. And then this TV show is what I'm working on right now. And in fact, my star, Eliza Hatfield, is actually watching right now. Hi, Eliza and Mark and Candace and the Hatfield family. Thank you for tuning in with me and Charlotte. And so we started shooting scenes for that on Saturday. And so that's a television series that I've written and am producing with a couple other people. So Don Zimmerman, Joe Payne, Eliza Hatfield, Norman Hanley, Willie Horton. It's going to be great.
Fantastic.
And it's basically teenage girl Indiana Jones librarians, Warehouse 13 kind of show. So
cool.
it'll be fun.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm channeling all my favorite shows. And
I'll have to check it out when it comes out. Definitely, we got to get together after your next book and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great story.
If you're ever in Tucson, come by, and I occasionally make it to the LA Orange County area to visit my family. So I think you're farther north, though.
That's okay. I go to LA a lot too.
Yeah, my sister lives up in the Jamestown. I don't know where that is.
Oh, she's right in the heart
east of Sacramento.
Country. Yeah, she's right in the heart of Ghost Country. Oh yeah.
Oh, Jamestown. I'm sure Jamestown has some great.
Oh, the Jamestown Hotel has a very famous ghost in there. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the casino, and yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff going on. All right, sir. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. How can people find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm hiding in plain sight. My my email is first name last name at AOL.com. I'm the last of the AOL dinosaurs. you can also find me on Facebook, LinkedIn. My young star is teaching me about Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and all the other things that dinosaurs like me are unaware of. And but if you just Google me, you'll probably find me because I'm hiding in plain sight.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Charlotte. I really appreciate you taking the time and enjoy the book. And if you send me a copy, I'll sign it and send it back to you.
Fair enough. And guys, enjoy his book. Go get that book. It's a great book.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic book. All right, sir. Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Love that stuff. Learned a lot today. Hope you guys did too. Tomorrow I'll be back. It keeps sinking down. I don't know why. Tomorrow I'll be back at 6:30 p.m. Pacific with No More Slevik, and we're going to be talking about more paranormal stuff. Only this time we're going to visit the state of Maine. So check it out tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And if you haven't done so already, feel free to check out our Patreon. That's where we try to keep the show on the air and broadcasting, and become a member over there because we offer a lot of stuff over at the Patreon for the different levels. So check that out. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow, and I want to thank Mark Hatfield and Woo Riders. I love it. Marisa, Pamela, everybody that came and to watch the show. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And from wherever you're watching the show, if you could hit that subscribe button or hit that follow button, that would be great too. And share the show. Thank you guys so much, and I will see everybody tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for No More Slevik. Have a great one and unpleasant dreams.